Every writer in Steemit liked fiction a lot, and they didn't like poets, 'cause poets did not. But they needed a home for their verbs and their nouns, just an editing place where red inking abounds. Then, Raccoon Rhonda K had a kinky idea, a wonderfully rad pen and inky idea. She'd start up a workshop, critiquing her friends, where the stories and glories and puns never end. And they say her steam power grew 3 times that day, then suggested a talk show should air right away. And the Fictioneers show, now on MSPWaves, is about to be one of your upvoted faves. They talk writing and world building, wings, balls and stuff. Their broadcasts are pantless, their jokes off the cuff. So join in for mind-melding fiction critique, 10 to 12 UTC time on Tuesday each week. There's only one rule that they deign to enforce: no poems allowed, except for this one, of course.
Welcome to another episode of MSP Waves. I'm sorry for the little kerfuffle here in the beginning. I'm kind of sick and I should have been here a little bit earlier, so I do apologize for that. We're going to have a fantastic show for you guys today. We have one of what I think is the most prolific writers to grace the pages of Steemit here with us for the show, and that's going to be Ezzy. But let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. As always, I am Anarcho Andrei. I am a witness here on the Minnow Support Project, and I am also an aspiring writer. And let's go down the line. Ezzy, you're up. Or perhaps not. How about Geek? You go after me. Introduce yourself for our listeners who are hopefully new. Hopefully we have new people listening too.
Okay, well, hi, I am Geek. I work with the Fictioneers a lot, and I also am a mini mod on the Poetry Workshop channel here on Discord, MSP. I write poetry and fiction with economic undertones, and this is Jimitations sitting with me.
Hi, I'm Jimitations. I'm Jimmy, and I am a voice actor, and I have my show on Wednesday mornings, Esteemed Broccoli, right here on these very airwaves.
Hi, I'm Pegasus Physics. I am a writer, voice actor, graphic artist. I'm usually in the Fiction Workshop. Happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Rhonda K. I am moderator in the Fiction Workshop as well as channel moderator. Very happy to be here tonight, and I'm just thrilled with our guest. I'm very happy about this.
I'm Tyler, and I feel like adding more to the list. I'm an artist, a writer, graphic designer, web designer, voice actor, a dad, part chicken, and yeah, hi.
I'm Jessica. I'm J.R. Hughes on Steemit, and I enjoy writing. I'm a mom and a wife, and I'm excited that Easy's here as well. He really is, we swear, he's really here.
We're working on it, and it will be set for the show, and you guys will be able to hear from Easy, who once again I think is one of the most prolific writers that we have on Steemit today. Real quick, because it totally slipped my mind as I was trying to intro the show, and I'm dying a little bit. MSPWaves Radio, Steemit Incorporated, and their respective owners take no responsibility for the opinions or statements made by the talk show hosts or their guests. Statements and show topics are not necessarily the beliefs of the radio station or of Steemit Incorporated. The material on Fictioneers Webcast is provided for educational and informational purposes only. So now that I got that disclaimer out of the way, we can get onto the real show.
I think that we're going to have a delay. We were going to start with Easy tonight. Ezzy, when you get the microphone working, you're going to have to tell us how to say your name. So I think someone is going to work with you kind of behind the scenes on getting the microphone going. But we do have some other things that we can do in the interim. And I'm going to pass this over to J.R. Hughes and let her take this away.
Well, I guess I can start the show by talking about our new conflict prompt contest. It starts this week. I advise no one to post before Thursday because the winner will be on the show next week and we'll get to read their piece. And so it would be good to have a little bit of payout time left on that. The conflict prompt is man versus self, which should be a lot of fun. It will be 500 words or less, so you got to really know how to use every word to the best that you possibly can. That helps us be able to get through them all and really give them all the attention they deserve. We'll have a post going out tomorrow morning, maybe tonight, announcing it, but that's basically where you're at. If you want to bring your submissions by the workshop, we will have some designated reviewers who will not be part of judging, so they'll be able to help you out.
Which is going to be awesome, and I have decided that now that I'm not like dying up to my eyeballs in homework, I will actually put forth the effort and make a post for that contest. So you've dragged me out of the depths of whatever it is that I'm in. I don't even really have a word for it, but you've dragged me out of those depths to produce some fiction. Thank you for that, Jess.
That's awesome. I'm excited that you even want to see a word after all of that law reading you had to do.
It's amazing. And one of these days I am going to catch up finally and start posting for Adventures in law school, but probably not until next year. We'll get there.
Understandable. Well, we had a little bit of drama this week with Rhonda on her little Facebook page. Maybe you can share about that, because I know that we've been pretty active in sharing what you do in your area for animal rescue. And
sharing is caring.
Sharing is caring. We're like a little family here. So go ahead and share a little bit with folks about what went on this week. And I hear it has had a good outcome. She did fall asleep. Holy crap.
No, I'm here. I was off on my Steemit page trying to pull up. I was trying to pull up a post to tell you about and get the link. And I forgot that I can't, when I do that, when I go off of Discord, I can't, my push to talk doesn't work. So, but anyway, so I'm going to put that post up. There's actually a fundraiser on, that has been started for my rescue and for the situation by Steemit, someone on Steemit. I don't know how much anybody is familiar with the problems that I have in Central Appalachia with not just the lack of animal, but it's just hostility. It's just blatant, hostility here. And every time I post for help or post that something's wrong or whatever, I basically take a beat down. So I've gotten really mean on my Facebook page. If any of you have gone over there, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. Like, it's I'm impressive. One way here.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
I live for this shit.
So, I mean, it's like, this is the real me here, but I've had to learn to be a different me to handle these people here in Appalachia. So anyway, we had some pretty nasty comments and nasty things going on over there and whatnot. And, what had happened is they had a fair or a festival in town, and some vendor was giving little baby chickens away to kids as prizes for game. And I mean, most of us kind of would viscerally react to that and say, what? Why would they even do that? And, parents were upset and all of that. Well, here, the big part is that it's against law in Virginia. And this isn't, I know we were in Virginia. And there were 15 uniformed cops there. There was a law enforcement agency had a tent set up. There was the town police, and none of this, this was going on right in front of everybody. So I posted about it on Facebook, and of course we had drama. And all of a sudden, I'm Ursula. Somebody's posting Ursula memes now. I'm Ursula, by the way. I'm no longer even Rhonda. I'm Ursula. So
She's
I'm
got
not
a
even
great singing voice.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, but anyway, it got really ugly. They were insulting people's children, calling people's children ugly, calling me. I mean, it just got really bad, and I was giving it as well. Well, some people from Steemit slipped over onto the rescue's Facebook page and started kind of posting, I'm so-and-so from Denmark. I'm so-and-so from Belgium. I'm so-and-so. We're very concerned about what's going on in this little town. Well, guess what? For the first time in 5 years, we got a positive response. I met with the chief of police from the town today, and he has actually made contact with that vendor He followed through on everything. He is very concerned that people from all over the world were watching our little Appalachian town, and it actually worked out really well. So I'm going to make a post about it, but I just want to say while we're on the radio, thank you everybody who spoke up, because it's, I think, a little frightening and a little jarring for a little small town police department to realize that all of a sudden they're on the international stage and people from all over the world are aware of what happened. So Steemit has some power, I think, that we haven't even started to tap yet. And this makes me, I went from yesterday ready to stick my head in the oven or jump out a window or step out in front of a bus or put Appalachia on a bus and drive it off a cliff. I was ready to nuke it and just be done with it. But, I went from that yesterday to today having a really empowered feeling. And I just want to thank everybody and say, hey, you know what? It's the spirit of Steemit. This is what makes it great.
It really
That
is.
is awesome, Rhonda.
Yeah.
That is awesome. It's really great to know that, a community can develop from all over the world like that and have an effect. However high your priorities are with that particular event, I think it's important to show how, we're able to band together over this relatively new platform and really make things happen all over the place. Let me just check here. Ezzy, can we hear you yet?
Hello?
Hey.
Yay! And is it Easy or Ezzy?
It's supposed to be easy, but Ezzy is fine.
Easy.
There we go. All right.
That's the one. I'm so sorry, Anarka, I'm really, really sorry. I'm really, really sorry. That was a fantastic introduction, and I messed it all up. Really sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Believe me, this stuff happens all the time. You're not the first, and I promise you won't be the last. I'm probably going to screw it up next time, and I almost screwed it up this time too, so don't feel bad. Don't.
The show's only started. Just give us some time.
We're a comedy of we're a comedy of errors right now, but it's become part of the fabric of the show. So people expect it. So it's not quite as embarrassing. It's like, it's not, are they going to mess up? It's which part are they going to mess up? So, hey, we're good. We're good. We're on track.
Like if
this was a show either.
Go ahead.
Every single show on MSPWaves has technical difficulties every day. So we're just part of the game.
There we go.
Thank you.
Although I think we got the handoff issue squared away, I just want to take a minute to shout out to Rondon and everybody else who worked on this, because it seems now that we have a method where instead of trying to coordinate timing the handoff between the two show hosts, like for example, I was working with Globocop and I had my stream running, and I was waiting for him to give me the cue to start, and the switch off was based on switching off on some third-party application, so I didn't have to worry about starting my stream the minute that Scaredy Cat told me to start. So I think we're making big strides now with smoothing out the transitions on the radio. So I'm really happy about that. Really excited about that.
That's got to be helpful for you since you're the one handling all of that, and all we do is show up and talk.
Oh,
Thank
please.
you.
Please.
So, Easy, you've been on Steemit, I guess, for a little over a year. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. About a year now. I think I joined back in beginning of July, when the platform looked very different to what it does now. It's fantastic.
So did you join for the purpose of writing fiction, or I've noticed you do some reviews and things as well, movie reviews, book reviews. Was that your goal when you got on Steemit, or was it more of a social platform?
Right. Okay. Basically, how it worked out is I got into Bitcoin, good few years ago. Let's say 2014. I was quite into crypto. As I say, just buying up and investing and looking at other coins, and I was hearing about Steemit a few months before it blew up, because I believe it was sometime the beginning of July where it. The whole thing just blew up. I mean, it was at 25 cents for a long time. Nothing was happening, but I was hearing rumors of this social media platform about to open up. It's crypto-based, social media platform. So I was thinking, okay, interesting, but I just put it to one side at that point, and then one evening, I'm checking a news feed, and I'm realizing that this thing's blown up to like $4, and I'm like, wow, something to check out here, So yeah, checked it out, and immediately was blown away by what I saw. The layout, even then, as basic as it was, and like finding my way around. Yeah, it was great, and that's how I found Steemit, basically. Just from me realizing that the price had gone up and knowing something beforehand about this new social media platform that was opening up.
Oh, so that's awesome. Well, did you write fiction before you got on Steemit, or was it something where, see, I hadn't written fiction in years and years and years, and when I joined Steemit, it was almost like, well, I've got to have something to put up there. So I just started writing again. Was it something that you were doing previously, or?
This is my first venture into writing fiction. I mean, I had written before on scraps of paper buried away in a drawer somewhere, for a long, long time, but nothing published or anything like it, on any type of website or anywhere. So yeah, brand new arena for me, and very enjoyable at the same time.
Well, do you want to tell us a little about your latest, your Hellbent? Maybe what got you thinking on that track? I know it's a little grittier maybe than what you had out there previously.
Yeah, it was just something I threw together, kind of like this, like kind of Tarantino-esque, vision I had in my mind. I, kind of threw into words, and just putting something together to possibly branch out, at a later point, but I wasn't too sure about that. So it was supposed to be like a one-off, two-part just short story. But judging by the feedback and the comments I've been getting, I most probably now will branch out and just make it a little bit longer than I first hoped to do.
That's awesome. So what about like future plans? Are you planning to maybe try and get published, or is this strictly a Steemit based thing? Do you share on any other sites or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, again, I haven't really thought, that far into the future kind of thing. But again, I was thrown into this arena. I found, it's like I've just discovered like a secret love of mine, pretty much, So, so given what I've written, you can see from my blog that I pretty much enjoy, very much what I do. So yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, publication and all that would be the next step, I guess. Yeah, and it's something I would be very interested in. Yeah.
Well, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I understand that last year you went to the last Steam Fest. You were invited you won an award. I would be very interested to hear all about your experience, how that came about, and how the trip went.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That was just out of the blue, very unexpected. First of all, let me just say that Roland P is, an absolute master in putting events together. I mean, everyone was completely blown away by, the scale and, the job he did. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. I heard from some of the guys that they were just expecting to go to this event and just have like, a bunch of seats lined up and, this board where people are just introducing, facets of Steam and all the rest of it. So to have it on this kind of scale, with all these, great people speaking and all the rest of it, it was just phenomenal. So the event itself was fantastic, and they had this award ceremony as well.
And tell us about the award you won.
Okay. So
don't be modest. We are just really wanting to hear this. This is fun.
Okay, I mean, I'll just break it down exactly how it happened. The awards were being announced. I knew that I was up for, best original fiction. Luckily, I've got enough votes by people out there to be, even nominated, which was great. I remember I was with my wife at the time. She's also blogging on Steemit as well. She was actually the inspiration why I started blogging in the first place, but that's another story. And basically, sitting with her, and they announced it. Honestly, I wasn't even paying attention, because I was thinking of like two other quite big names out there that I thought, they were just going to walk away with it. So I was like, okay, fine. I was just having a chat, and then I believe it was Mrs. Steemit called out my name. Everything kind of became a blur, because obviously I had to run down to the stage, and there's a lot of people there, and I'm quite shy by nature. I don't know. That's just how I am. So my wife disappeared downstairs. Come downstairs. Quickly. Like this is really cool. So I kind of made my way down these really narrow steps, almost tripping up. As I was going down these stairs. Went up to the stage, and it was again just like a blur. I was so nervous. I really didn't know what to say. Kind of like now, actually. But I mean, I just said like thank you to everyone for just giving me this recognition. And that's all the award was really. It was like recognition, but again, it gave me such a drive to just continue on doing, and I was realizing. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that's fantastic. You were recognized by everybody there at Steemit or at Steamfest for being a fantastic author. I also like the fact that you were not prepared for this. Like it wasn't like the Emmys or the Academy or whatever the other other award shows for TV and other media where like they tell you ahead of time and you have to pretend to be surprised that you win or pretend to be surprised that you lose. You actually were surprised that you won. That cracked me up.
Yes, absolutely.
Easy, this is Geek. Can you tell us what your wife's handle is on Steemit?
Yeah, sure. She's Ria, REA. I don't know if you guys know, but yeah.
You know what? I follow her. I did not realize. Okay. Well, as a matter of fact, just last week we were talking about a story that I had written for the Fictioneers contest in narrative conflict. And I wrote my story. It came in first place, but I wrote it based on a photograph that Ria had posted from the Heartwood Forest. What a small world.
I knew that name. Yes.
Oh, wow. Yes, of course. I mean, I was there with her when she took those photos. So, beautiful place, by the way. And that's okay. That's incredible. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah.
That is amazing.
Yeah,
We need to
even
make sure
Steemit is a small world.
I know, and we need to make sure she gets a copy of or gets a link to that story so she can see what it. Yeah.
She did. I contacted her and gave her the link, and she's read it. And it is such a tiny world.
It really is. Well, I just as you said that you are kind of shy by nature, and so many writers are, and we find that, and we've been prodded a little to get out of the workshop, to crawl out of the workshop, out of our little cave, and get into general and talk to people. Sometimes that's really hard for writers, and we have sort of a split thing where writing is very solitary, and you can only do it. I mean, you write alone, and it all comes from you onto the page, and then suddenly you have to transform and be this public figure on social media. You market your books or whatever, and like here we're going and meeting people, and it's difficult. But I think that's a pretty common thing with writers, and I think it's maybe a common thing with creative types or whatever. But it does. It is hard for some people, but we need to, I think we all need to understand that, people, when they see our words and they're moved by our stories, they think they know us, and maybe they do, because I can tell a lot about a writer. Just give me 100 words and I can tell you a great deal about the person that wrote them. So we kind of put ourselves bare. But when I first came to Steemit, I've got 2 indie published novels. I have 1 novel now with an agent, so I've been writing for a long time. But I came to Steemit I didn't even know what Bitcoin was, and you told your story about coming, with Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency drew you here. I didn't even know. I'm just like, oh, this is somewhere else to write and post, And when I started looking around Steemit, yours was the first fiction I found on Steemit, and I read it. I mean, I just went boom. My editor turned off. The editor in my head turned off. I read it, and I was like, okay, this is possible on Steemit. It is absolutely possible for authors to write fiction and to succeed. So you never know. When you write something and you do something and you accomplish something, you really don't know who it affects and who it touches and who it impacts. But, I don't know that I would have stuck with Steemit had I not seen the success that you were having with it. So there you go.
Oh, wow. That's a really big thing you've just said. And really, no, I'm really grateful to hear that. That's incredible. And we should all be grateful that, you've come to this platform, given the experience and knowledge you have, so you can guide us guys, me and everyone here, in the right direction to, go that next step further, publication and just keep pushing forward, because as I say, everything I've written on Steemit is, I believe, a very rough draft. Again, I don't want to read through it because I know I can't edit it. So, it's like I just leave it in the back of my mind until someone like yourself comes along and, can just, again, push us in the right direction and just go to that next step further. And thank you so much for the compliment. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you opening, pushing through that door and getting it open and holding the door. I saw something, a documentary about Bitcoin, and one of the people, they were talking about the guy that got arrested, and the first guy through the door gets shot. Well, you didn't get shot, so and there were other fiction writers here, but you're you were the first major success with it. So luckily you didn't get shot. But yeah, publishing is definitely, that's the angle that we're working. And people, I think there's been a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of confusion because of the I don't want to say strict, picky.
Narrow, the very
narrow.
Thank you. That's good. The very narrow scope of the SFT and the things that we do in the workshop. It's not that the other things that don't get curated are bad. It's, we're going by the mainstream publishing, what our experience, mine and Carol and Bex and the people who've dealt on the fringes. If I were more experienced, I would have books on a top 5 imprint. But so just saying, don't have that much experience. But
you're published, it counts.
Well, hey, a literary agent has my manuscript. That is like, that doesn't happen. That never happens. That's a myth, a rumor. But hey, it happened. He's got it, so we'll see. But the reason our scope is that narrow, it's like exercise, a training. I'm trying to get everybody conditioned in thinking and everything. When you get out there and you start dealing with literary agents and publishers, they're mean, and they're very picky, and they are looking for reasons to throw you in the trash, because everything, they get a slush pile, and 99% of it is total crap. And then, they'll have 1% of it that's really good, but what's good is really good. And you're competing against the best writers in the world. And it's fierce. It's very fierce. And I recently did pitch wars with my novel that this agent has. And everybody was like, oh yeah, they're going to love yours. They're going to, you know what? I didn't even get a call back on it because everything those agents got was good. And I may write well in a small fish pond, but you get out there in the ocean and shoo, there's some really good writers out there. So I think what we're trying to do with this is condition everybody to think toward publishing and toward that end. And we're trying to find novels to publish right now. We're definitely looking for stuff to publish. I want everybody to try to go mainstream first, because if somebody gets if somebody gets on a top 5 imprint, as long as they don't forget we exist, if everybody gets on the top 5, that's only going to help us, But for the novels that people want to self-publish and just need the help with, we're going to be able to offer the editing service, all the way from copy edit to developmental edit to content edit. We can get the cover art together, and most importantly, we can get those ISBN numbers that a bookstore will take. And we can also, hopefully with crypto backing, it'll be a little easier to raise money to promote.
Yes.
So and the promotion is key. So that's exactly what we want to do. And I'm not saying, Ezra, you better bring your books and let us publish them, or we're going to like start flag war here. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we're not saying we're going to flag your stuff.
No.
We're just gently suggesting that you start, this direction.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is exactly what you were saying a few minutes ago. It is absolutely in line with what we're thinking. You get your drafts out there, you put your things on Steemit. We realize those may be drafts. Things have to change a lot, but the end goal, bing, ding, 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 it is publishing for Steemit as well as everybody else in the world. And so I think that to be able to say that this author got their start on Steemit and was backed by Steemit, you think back to the situation that I just described about my rescue. I've been 5 years in oblivion with no help from any mainstream, any of the major animal welfare agencies or anything. And Steemit was what finally got something done. I want to turn that around and use it with our publishing and our writing too. And I think the ability is there. So I'm pretty excited. Just saying.
We can't tell.
Oh yeah, no, it's a complete mystery.
Doesn't really come through on radio.
No, not at all.
So yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. I agree with every word you just said right there. I mean, as I say, for myself, someone like you, as I say, your presence here is, as I say, fantastic. It gives us like a direction to go towards, and yeah, you know the right path to guide us on. So yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. Yeah, let's see how far we can push this.
That's it. Yes, see how far we can take it. That's exactly right. I'm down with that.
One thing, Izzy, one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I read the setup a while back, and then I read your alternate takes on it. I just wanted to mention it. I realized it was a month ago, but that was an awesome story, and I love what you did with it. I love that you did the same core set of events and then 3 other perspectives on it. So you had your story, and then you had 3 other ways of telling the same event. I thought that was fantastic. That was really, really cool.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just trying different things, different angles, trying to keep it fresh. Yeah, I mean, I threw that together. I think there was four parts to that, if I'm right. So yeah, I mean, I've got a few comments saying you're going to keep it going. I said no, it's just supposed to be just some flashpoint fiction, just throw out there. But yeah, just practicing, just practicing. But yeah, I really appreciate your compliment. Thank you.
Not a problem, because I've tried to do something similar in a couple of my other stories, and I think it kind of fell a little flat, because I had my sci-fi serial going at one point a little while back, and there was a portion where it was one scene from one set of protagonists and then from the perspective of another protagonist, and then they finally meet at the end of the second chapter, and then moving forward, the third chapter is all of them together, and it's cool to see another author do something similar and see how they do it, and I have to say I like the way you did it a little bit better than I did, so I appreciate you providing that sort of insight into doing that, because I plan to do stuff like that later on down the line.
I've listened to some books like that, and I really enjoy them, but I've often wondered, like, do they write the whole story from one person's perspective, then go back and write, like, almost another book? Because I find it really hard to switch perspectives like that in the middle of something.
The way that I'm doing it is when it switches perspectives, all I do is I jump back about 10 or 15 seconds, so that, when it's done with person A, it'll switch to person B and just kind of see the last thing that they did or hear the last words that they said or whatever, and then kind of pick up and take over from there.
Yeah, that makes sense. You don't find it I find it hard to be in a different voice, Like, I feel like I get into a particular voice and that's just the one I want to write in all the time. And like just recently I had to write a scene. Well, I didn't have to, but I felt like
Oh,
I
you
had
had to.
come to, I felt like I had come to some time to give some of the childhood background, and trying to write it from the perspective of the child as opposed to the adult. Even that was just really difficult. I get this like 4-year-old talking in hard-boiled detective novel language.
Well, and I think a lot of it comes down to, and we've had a really strong focus on deep point of view, deep POV, and trying to get the author to be in or get the reader to be in the character's head. In order to do that as an author, you have to be in the character's head. And what helped me out was the fact that at that particular moment in time, I was not writing that way, which may be a positive, maybe a negative, probably a negative, but it did help that I already had particular personalities set aside for each of these characters, and I was thinking of how to write each of these characters on their own. And it's like what you said, Tyler, you'd like jump back about 15 seconds, because so I wrote the first chapter was from the perspective of the two main protagonists, and they went into this military installation. They were, being escorted to be questioned about something, whatever, right? And so they're being escorted by their military liaison, and they split up, and the main protagonist gets stuck in a room, and it just goes through them talking to each other and trying to figure out what's going on, and then they get broken out by their military liaison. Well, the next chapter starts at the same point. Like I literally reused some of the text and then just took it another direction with the military liaison officer, and then she came back around and cut in to the same text that I was using at the end of the first chapter. So that splicing kind of helps to bring things together, especially if you have lines of dialogue or something that you can literally just lift from one page and put it onto another.
Exactly, and that's that's kind of what I was doing. I put those 5 chapters or whatever of the first part of my novel up, and there are parts when what's the one part? Okay, they're watching a news broadcaster or whatever, and she's interrupted by a guy, and then it switches perspective to somebody on a plane who's watching the broadcast, and it backs up to the beginning of when she started talking, and then the guy interrupts, and then he kind of takes over, right?
But yeah, I wanted to bring attention to that, because that was just a really, really cool piece of flash fiction, easy, and I thoroughly enjoyed reading them. I did.
Thank you, man. Thank you very much. I was actually in the middle of writing a book. Actually, when I went to Steamfest, I think, called The Symbiotic Protocol. I was writing this book. I was in the middle, of basically, I've got it all wrapped up in my head. There's a few chapters to go. I still haven't finished it yet, but again, I've got it all mapped out in my mind. But yeah, there was a few chapters I wrote in that book that did exactly as you said. Like, let's say a chapter ended with a certain scene, the next chapter tells the scene from a different perspective and just continues the chapter from that person's perspective. So I love Flashpoint fiction because, I don't know, I guess readers probably find it interesting, just different perspectives. The whole thing is, I guess, trying to just capture the reader's attention and just grab it for as long as you can, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about flash fiction, and that's actually what I started writing here when I first started writing, because I wrote for fun as a hobby and nothing really serious. But I got here and I started writing flash fiction, and that's actually what got me to finish the novel that I'm now self-publishing chapter by chapter here on Steemit. But there's so much freedom, because I mean, maybe my perspective's a little bit different, but for flash fiction, you have a scene or a feeling or an emotion, and then you explore it, and it's this short little piece, but it's self-contained. It functions within itself. You're not left wanting anything on the other end of it.
That's
yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Oh, for all of our listeners, I'm sorry I sound like garbage, but I'm coming down with whatever my daughter had, which she's been suffering for a couple of days. So apologies if I sound like crap, or if you hear me sniffle or blow my nose. I'm doing my best.
Okay, we'll forgive you for almost everything. The only thing we won't forgive you for is if you somehow manage to transmit that virus to us and we get sick. Oh,
you're getting it, Rhonda.
Okay, yeah. Well, that doesn't
prepared.
get forgiven. Okay, all right.
My sister lives 1,700 miles away, and we get sick at the same time all the time. It's really ridiculous.
Hope we don't
That's
catch
scary.
a microphone virus.
It's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have a question for Easy, and maybe this will help us segue a little into kind of what I wanted to bring up in the coffee talk. So have you ever written, so because like what you've got up now is kind of dark, do you ever get questioned by friends and family, like, where did that come from? I had a piece my mother she listened to them read and critique my piece on here a couple weeks ago, and she says, I really love your writing, but I wish you didn't have so much sexy stuff in it. And I thought, well, it's not like I'm writing 50 Shades of Grey, God.
Thank God.
Right.
Well, thank God, because that the level of the quality of writing in that novel is horrific. It's
Really,
horrendous. It's
truly.
unreadable.
Yes. But I'm wondering if Easy or any of you ever have family members question, like, oh, where did that come from?
No, I mean, I haven't had any, as I say, the only feedback I've got is from Steemit itself. Obviously my wife reads, what I write as well. I haven't had anything, any comment like that. Again, I don't know if it's out of politeness or, or what the reason for that. I don't know. I just write whatever I feel, sets the tone in what I'm trying to portray. And, that just, I'm off from that point. I just write exactly how I want to set the tone, but I don't know I haven't had any, any feedback as in I've overstepped the mark or anything like that.
So what you're saying is your family loves you better than my mother loves me, which is probably true. Hi, Mom. I know she's listening.
I don't know. I guess it's horses.
At least your family's agreed to read your stuff, Rhonda.
I guess it's it's so subjective. Like whoever's gonna read or like your work, I mean, it might work for someone, it might not work for another person. Obviously, the more boundaries you push, the more I guess you're gonna appeal to a certain niche audience, I guess. But I don't think, from what I've read so far of your incredible writing and a lot of authors out there, I haven't really seen anything that I feel has pushed any limits, towards like a negative perspective. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten to the point where I need like the not safe for work or anything.
Just wait till I get started.
So it shouldn't be wired for you. That's good.
Yes.
You're okay.
Yes.
I think this is just a good point. That's what I think. I think this is a very good point. With a writer or good writer, someone with that vivid Technicolor imagination, I think that there does exist something in us that allows us to imagine the darkness and
Is
the
it gonna
dark
burst
places
out of our
we have to
chest?
go. Do what?
Is it gonna burst out of our chest like while we're eating a salad?
Yeah, it might. It
Okay.
might. It very, when I imagine a scene in something so very dark, I don't have I don't have a lot of personal experience many times with the actual scene or setup or event, action. I wrote about a plane crash in one of my paranormal novels that's on Amazon. And it was very emotional. And I've never been in an airplane. And I've certainly never been in a crash. I've never been to a crash site. I've never, so it's not like you draw from personal experience per se. But I think a writer has a certain ability in their mind to put themselves in someone else's shoes and to almost viscerally experience something that's going on. You can imagine, you can hear it. Like when I was writing that, I could hear the flames crackling, and it wasn't like I set out to write all of the senses, but it's just something that I think that certain people have and other people may struggle with. And that's not where it ends. You then have to learn the technical craft of how to get what you see and hear and feel on the inside in that imagination onto the page, and that's a totally different animal. And you have to accept that's you have to separate yourself from the imagination. But without that imagination and without that ability to put yourself in that situation, I don't think you get the kind of prose and the kind of writing that make people forget their reading. So I think that we do, to a certain degree, have to have some of that darkness. That has to be there somewhere. There has to be something to touch that we can go back in our life and touch emotionally to be able to put that on the page, but it may not be necessarily what we're writing about.
That's a really great point. I mean, one of the things we were talking about today in the workshop was the idea of self-insertion and how much, I mean, I don't personally think that an author can write without inserting themselves somewhere, some fantasy of themselves or some reality of themselves or their past. I mean, it's got to be in there somewhere. You know, it's a collaborative effort between the author and the audience, yes, but something of the author is definitely spilling onto the page. Does that mean that I think like Stephen King is psychotic? No. I hope not. I'm not psychotic, and I've written some pretty awful things, but you know, sometimes I'll write something and I'll go back and look at it and it will be just so dark. And I'm a very happy person. And I just wonder where it comes from. Or maybe I'm happy because I'm able to spew it onto the page in that way and be rid of it. I don't know. I'm kind of wondering if anybody else has experiences like that.
In
That
my
may be
outline,
your
I
way
do,
of
yeah.
processing it, Jess. I know I write a lot of stuff right now about something that I went through with my mother. So that's really personal and it's really painful. So the way that I've been dealing with the dark aspects of that is to couch the emotion and the situation between the characters in a setting that isn't so dark. So that's what I have put into a little fairy world, and that's my way of processing it. Whereas yours may be exactly what you're doing in your writing.
See, I've got in my outline, and I don't know if Rhonda recalls it at all, but I've got a scene. I haven't written it yet, but I've got it all plotted out in rather gruesome detail. A scene that's going to happen, and I can't relate to it because of the perspective that it comes from. But it's bloody dark, and I'm curious to see how I'm going to feel as I'm writing it. I know when I plotted it out in the outline, I had to look back over it a couple times and go, you got to be shitting me. Like, can you even write this?
I'm curious if anyone's dark has dipped into dark humor, because the screenplay I've been working on lately, it's gotten incredibly violent, but then it's also teetered into this very comedic side, like the very stoner comedy style. Like who's the guy that he laughs all the time, and he did like Pineapple Express and other films.
Oh, Seth Rogen?
Yes, thank you. It goes into that kind of comedy,
Tyler,
but
did
it
you say
also goes
G-Mucks?
into a G-Mucks. But I don't know. I wonder if anyone else is going into like a dark comedy as well, because that kind of throws me off, is when I make something really violent and then all of a sudden the character does something kind of slapsticky, and it feels like a weird thing to happen.
Well, to be fair, the novel that I'm releasing, since we're talking about darkness and gruesome and stuff, there's some scenes in there that are they're pretty intense. A guy gets unzipped or he gets peeled like an orange. But no, the stories that I've written where there is some violence and there's there's a lot of chaos going on. Usually, I rely on dialogue for that and just witticisms. So I don't usually have a whole lot of slapstick, but witty dialogue goes a long way, cracking jokes and stuff. Because in my mind, that's what I'd be doing if I was in a similar situation. That's what I do now. Try and cut the tension when I'm in high stress situations. I crack jokes. They're not necessarily funny, but I crack jokes
when I do that.
Well, that's black humor, and it's a very
The blackest
widely,
of humor.
yeah, blackest of humor. It is. It's a very widely accepted phenomenon. I just don't know how deep you guys want me to get with it, because I worked in EMS before I had so many health issues that I was becoming the patient more than I was treating the patient. And we had some pretty gruesome calls. But Pegasus, you were talking about the humor. That's actually a very good that's an accurate representation of human behavior. That's what we do to protect ourselves in situations like that. There was an incident where someone's, let's just say, they lost their head, and the ambulance, I had to follow the ambulance because there was human blood running out the back door. So I got in my personal vehicle, and followed the ambulance. And the driver and the paramedic that was on that particular truck, they had to play like some, I don't even want to name the song, but it was very inappropriate, by all standards to be playing at that moment. But it helped them get that body to the hospital morgue with their sanity intact, if that makes sense. So I think the humor, the slapstick and whatever, I don't think that's a deviation from actual. I think people really do that in the most gruesome of circumstances. That happens. So Pegasus, I think you're okay. I mean, you can even, take it and make it actual humor so that where the audience laughs too. But I don't think it's such a stretch to think that you would get some slapstick in a moment like that, even if it was serious or funny. It's right.
I have a friend of mine. She was on the one of the fire and rescue crews up here and whatnot, and I guess that's how they had to deal with it. Like, they made some pretty terrible jokes, in some of the most violent circumstances. This one guy, I don't know if I should tell this, but one guy decided that he was possessed by Satan and needed to castrate himself. So I guess that got pretty weird.
The pain Olympics.
And I can understand, having been there. I can certainly put myself.
You've castrated yourself?
No. Oh my God. Maybe, yeah. Well, I can't say what I was going to say on air. I forget, we're not in the workshop where I can delete comments. This can't be deleted. So I'm just, it's gone.
Nuts.
But
that's
just,
what she said.
Yeah, that's what
Go
she
on.
said. But just,
nuts.
I can understand why they would be making jokes about that, because the guys, especially, just horrified. They're going to have nightmares that night, right? Mm-hmm.
I've always held that if I was going to go, if I was just going to have a psychotic break, if something really, truly terrible happened and I was possessed with the urge to, just go on a violent rampage, the song that would be playing in my head would be The Piano Man by Billy Joel. So, yeah, I feel you guys.
I think we all feel like that sometimes. It's just we suppress ourselves and just don't do it. But yeah, I can relate to that.
But that's what writing's for, right? That's the way we can exorcise our demons into text, and we can play around with things that would never, ever, ever happen in real life. Ever.
That's what you said.
Would never happen. Would never, never, ever happen.
Definitely, that's absolutely right. I mean, what you guys are saying, it makes so much sense to me. When you write something, I think even if you haven't experienced, as say Rhonda was saying, about the plane crash. I think with imagination, it's possible to put yourself in that, in that situation, in that mindset, to the point where, you feel physically upset, or you feel like crying, or you feel somewhat emotional, because it's so real to you that, you're in that moment. It's like you've actually lived it. I totally believe that with the power of our imagination, we can make that happen. We can actually see it as if it's been a reality in our past, and in terms of writing, I think that's literally like gold dust, because you're describing something that you've already envisioned, you've already seen. And the more powerful that emotion in your mind, the better you're going to describe it.
I had to type something to keep from interrupting you. I just wanted to scream yes at the top of my lungs. Yeah, yes. I wish Carol could be here. She and I have had this conversation many times. Sometimes when a character starts talking to me, and some of you may know what I'm talking about, they become so real, such a real three-dimensional person, and they will tell you things about themselves and whatnot.
Yeah, they will.
It's almost like you're channeling something real. And I'm not getting metaphysical here. I think what you were just saying, Ezzy, I think we're tapping into something, some sort of stored consciousness, or primitive memory, or something like that. Reincarnation, not reincarnation. I don't know what the heck I believe about any of that, but I'm not a skeptic. I'm just open to anything as possible. But I do know that when I'm writing, my characters, there's no way that I'm just sitting there making that up. There is some kind of consciousness, collective or supernatural or natural, or something that you tap into that, and it does leave you shaken, physically and emotionally shaken. I have a lot more to say about this. I'm not going to keep going in one stretch, but
well, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, because I have my own thoughts on that, just from my experience in writing, flash fiction, all sorts of other stuff. I think that like the characters that we put on paper, and this is certainly the case for me, because I know where it comes from, and I can recognize it when I put it on the page. The characters that I write, they're aspects and pieces of me that take their own form. So, I mean, the main character in the novel I'm writing, he embodies a lot of the darker aspects of my personality, and I've given him a form in which there is no the rest of me to balance it out or to cancel some of it out. It's just that part of me. The same thing goes for the protagonist in the sci-fi serial. Like, I put myself, part of myself in his shoes, and that's every character I've ever written in some way, shape, or form is a part of me. Like, a part of me is in that character, and that character is built from that piece. And of course, they're unique persons, and they have their own backstory and so on and so forth. But their essence, the core of their being, is me. I'm writing myself onto these pages.
Yes.
I want to add to what you were saying, Rhonda, just a little metaphysical. Every single story I write feels like I'm telling a lucid dream that I can't forget.
yeah, I can relate to that.
And I wonder too how much of it might be for characters that aren't coming out of us ourselves, might be just from collective memory.
Could be.
Yeah.
Ezzy, you were about to say something.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. I was just gonna say. I mean, I guess for I don't know if it'd be fair to say non-authors or people who don't write to this degree that we're talking about. There's like a very defined line between imagination and, let's say, reality. But I think if you're in an author's mindset, especially if you're writing fiction and all the rest, that line can be very blurred. You can almost transport yourself to one reality and then to another, instantly, so that's how I find I write, and that makes it a hell of a lot easier for me to do. If you literally just envision it to that degree, that literally it becomes almost like some kind of a reality that you can just kind of phase in and out of. I don't know if I'm going off on one or if you guys can relate to that.
Oh, no,
totally.
I know exactly what you're talking
totally.
about. And I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because I have an idea to write a story.
Cacophony of
similar to
agreement.
That. Yeah, cacophony of agreement. But I have an idea to write kind of a story, or a series of short stories along that vein, where it's it's a singular individual, but he inhabits different forms throughout each of the stories. And an author by the name of Michael Moorcock actually did that and did that very, very well. He has a whole series based around the Champion of Order and the Pawn of Chaos, and normally the form that the Pawn of Chaos takes is Elric of Melnibone, I think is how it's pronounced, but Michael Moorcock. Spelled as it sounds. Spelled as it sounds.
His self-insertion level is epic.
Like to the max. To the max. He's actually a really excellent author as far as like fantasy work goes. Pawn of Chaos was an excellent collection, like a really absolutely fantastic collection that had a huge impact on me. So if you guys ever get a chance to find that or look it up, I strongly recommend it. I strongly recommend it. Can't recommend it enough. But I've had that idea for a while to have something similar like that, where you have, you take the core of a character, you take the essence of that character, like the soul or the spirit, right? What you pour into the characters that you write, and you have him or her or whoever inhabit different forms in different stories, but it's the same character. Like fundamentally, it's the same person experiencing different lifetimes.
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to figure out what kind of balls a man has to go public with a name like Moorcock when he could choose any nom de plume.
Who knows? I want to say that's his actual name. I could be wrong, but
it's got to be.
It has to be, because like who would come up with a pen name? Oh my god, Tyler,
oh my god.
Oh Jesus! So much is going to be lost in this recording because no, it's not. No, it's not, because this recording is totally taking into account the audience. So the audience room that everything's being posted in. So for those of you listening at a later time, you haven't lost anything. You're getting the full experience.
The full Monty.
I'm just looking up Dick Trickle, the race car driver.
Yes.
Oh, it only gets worse.
When I was running title in Texas, there was in Russ County a whole family, like they had their own section of the indices. Their last name was McAnally.
Oh dear.
We're sorry, Ezzy. I hope you're. I can't even.
I grew up with a girl named Anita Dick.
No. No.
Melanie Whorehouse.
Okay.
Oh goodness.
Oh my god.
Tim Allen, the comedian Tim Allen, changed his name from Tim Dick.
God,
oh gosh.
Okay.
All right, huge tangent into nothing.
Yes.
And we're killing Rhonda, so let's
I'm
bring it
crying.
on back.
I'm like literally mopping my eyes here. That you guys just don't.
This is normal.
This is actually giving me more incentive to come back to one of these discussions. So,
yeah,
please, we'd love to have you back.
If Jaji was here, this would go on. That woman, God, there's an entire comic strip dedicated to her. I mean, we do this quite a bit, and I hope no one is offended, but it is funny. It is. I can't help it.
We do usually stick more to innuendo than blatant, but
well, when there's a name like Moorcock thrown around,
when that's on the table, innuendo's over.
When you're throwing the Moorcock
is
around
on the table.
Yeah, that does it right there. Look at Lexicon. Oh my god.
Yeah, when you're throwing around Moorcock, this is what happens.
That's what she said.
Oh God,
my goodness. All right, so man versus self, our conflict prompt.
That was a perfect segue.
It doesn't help at all.
I think that's called boggling.
Yep, perfect segue.
I need a soundboard. God, I need a soundboard yesterday.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have to figure that out, because this show is going to be made a million times better with sounds.
Oh my gosh. That's kind of scary, though. I don't even want to know what kind of sound you'd put with this.
Oh, yeah.
That's what she said.
Hey, Tyler. Bring it in for the win. In the clutch.
That's what he said.
All right, so man versus self, seriously. Without the innuendo and without referring to anything else. Man versus self, narrative conflict. Go.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So I did want to put a little plug and a thank you out there. Thank you to everyone who's already donated to help with the prize pool. We will have 6 more of these, including the Man versus Self. We're trying to do a 20 SBD prize each week. We do have enough to do this week and next week, but if anyone wants to contribute, you can send a contribution to J.R. Hughes on Steemit and just put conflict prompt in the memo so we can keep track of what we have as far as a prize pool. At the end of the contest, anything that's left over the $20 per person will divide among all of the winners, including Geek, who was our lovely first winner.
Thanks.
But I'm really looking forward to Man versus Self. We had some really introspective entries in the first one, and more on the philosophical side. And I think that those authors might fare even better in this particular conflict prompt.
So, for those that are listening that don't know what Man versus Self is, would you do us the honor of explaining it for us?
It's going to be an internal conflict, basically you versus your desires, whatever struggles you might have, but these are internal conflicts, not with anything outside of your own mind, so very psychologically oriented.
I'm hoping we get some esoteric pieces because there, a lot can be said for, trying to overcome my sins or, my desires or so on and so forth. But what about something, mundane, like turning something mundane into something dramatic? That's always been a particular fascination for me, is like turning something mundane, like, I could buy, I've really wanted this DVD for a while, but I really need to, I can't really afford to put anything else on the credit card. So I really shouldn't, but I really want it, and just turning that into like some sort of dramatic narrative.
That's funny because that's where my mind went to.
Yeah, I know, right?
Awesome. My mind went to Phantom Hand Syndrome.
Oh, God almighty. This just keeps getting better and better.
Oh, boy.
I'm sorry. Go on.
Mine went to Arbitrary Kittens, Everyday Erotica, because that's what she's doing, is taking a very mundane situation and writing it in such a way that, I mean, it's not as literal as what you're talking about, Andrei, but you just have to read it.
Rich Corinthian leather.
That's just naturally sexy.
Or, something, crap, and I totally lost my train of thought. Because the mundane is something else that I want to see, but I'm curious to see if anybody does personification of your various desires or urges or, particular modes of thought. Because for me, internal conflicts in my mind have always been different, and maybe this is why I write the way I do, but like internal conflicts for me have always taken on, like a definite form. So like anytime I'm trying to figure out a problem or like consider different solutions to something that I'm dealing with in real life, I will have a conversation where I will, talk it out, and then I'll present myself with, pros and cons, which I know sounds crazy because it sounds like I'm talking to myself. I am talking to myself, but myself doesn't respond back. I'm just talking to myself. Okay, I'm talking out loud. So. But then, I pull ideas from my brain. But it would be interesting to see if somebody could, characterize the different aspects of a character's psyche and actually make them into, people. Or like
I think they made that
people.
Movie. It's called Inside Out.
Oh my God, no, it's not. Not the way it would be for me anyway. That would be That would definitely not be PG. It would be R. It'd be a hard R.
Let's switch it up.
Well, bring it, Andre. I mean, why are you giving it away to somebody else? You
I'll
do
bring
that.
it. Don't worry.
My God, that's what she said.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness. When
Sir, the excitement never stops here on Fictioneers Webcast.
I think we're just leveled after that little episode that we had a few minutes ago. I think it's going to take us all a while to pull back from that. So people what are the guidelines on this contest? When, how many words, where submit, what's that?
It has to be submitted by 11:59 Sunday night Eastern Standard Time. So, again, don't post anything before Thursday. It's not going to help to post it earlier, and you'll just run out of payout before we're able to get you on the radio next week if you're the winner. And so 500 words or less, make every word count. It will be judged according to the SFT standards. So we're looking for clean copy, no poor grammar, no errors in punctuation and spelling, things like that. Please do yourself a favor and run it through the workshop. I mean, folks are so happy to help with these sorts of things. And, so we're just looking for something that's professional and has an actual arc. And please do stick to the prompt.
One thing I want to mention about clean copy, because this came up in conversation a couple of days ago, and we had a little bit of a kerfuffle in the fiction workshop about it. Dialogue. Writing dialogue so that it's grammatically correct. That's huge. If you write dialogue in a story, there's a couple of different ways to do it. Some are, more traditional than others, and you can do it a couple of different ways, but it has to conform to grammar rules. If it doesn't, and I can attest to this as a reader, if it doesn't, it's jarring. It makes it more difficult to read the piece, which for a reader can cause problems. It can detract from the work.
Yeah, as a reader, you're expecting to see a certain formatting, and when you don't see that formatting, and you have to take that extra minute to figure out what the hell's going on the page, you're immediately thrown out of the story. And the goal as an author is to keep the reader as immersed in the story as possible. And right at the MSPU Fiction Workshop website, there is a great article on how to format dialogue for fiction. So please make use of it. Another thing I see a lot of is number formatting that's off. There's also an article on that there. And just, strange things like that, you might not even realize when you're reading it that it's that they put a number 8 instead of the word 8, but it does catch your eye, and it bounces you out of the world that the author has created.
Yeah, exactly. It's like if you're watching a movie and you see something that obviously it does not fit, like somebody, in a piece set in the Roman Empire, and somebody's wearing a wristwatch. I mean, yeah, okay, it doesn't detract from it super bad. It's just a small detail, but your eye immediately sees it because it's incongruous. One thing about the numbers, though, and I have said this before, I will never, ever, ever, ever transcribe 82nd Airborne as 2 words. It's going to be numbers. I'm sorry. I know that's against the numbering conventions, but I don't care.
Okay, well, just because all military historians disagree with you is not a big deal.
I don't give a shit.
Oh God! I do want to clarify. I don't think you were talking, and I think there could be some room for, because I was scratching my head for a minute until I got on board with you. I don't think you meant like the characters have to speak in proper English.
No, the format of the text itself.
The actual formatting, yeah. As far as, there are some people that are publishing books that they're not using the quotation marks, and they're not, they're doing some really weird things, and they're getting away with it because they've already sold how many millions of dollars. And guess what? That publisher's not going to tell them no to anything. So, they're publishing that. But, if you don't want to make your reader work hard, you want your reader to just be totally immersed and not have to struggle to understand what you're doing. But I do want to clear it up for people who may be listening and may be like me, like I was for a minute. What? He means all characters have to speak with proper English. That's not what he was saying. If your
Proper
characters,
British dialogue.
yes,
They
if your
must be
character
classically
speaks,
trained actors.
yeah, if your character speaks in broken English or your character speaks, we're not talking about dialect because I'm kind of squill a little bit on dialect, but just talking, conversational English. Yes, that's perfectly fine. Just format it properly.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of times when I'm listening to an audiobook and they'll be pronouncing, it is this, it is that. And I just think, oh, surely this 17-year-old would be saying it's this, it's that, So conversational, is better in dialogue. But I do want to put out a little bit of a warning. Doing dialects and broken English, I mean, if you don't really know what you're doing, probably just don't. I mean, it has to be very consistent, and if it's not, and it's not really understandable to the reader where you're going with that, it is worse than if you just went with normal conversational English and described them as speaking like hillbillies or whatever.
Yeah.
Amen.
In regards to that, consider if you ever want to try and go down that road, treat it as though you're writing in another language. And the reason I say that is because, like Jessica just said, it has to be consistent. So you know how other languages have rules of grammar and vocabulary. You have to maintain the same standard every time you write that character speaking a certain way. Because if you don't, it's just going to break it up, and the reader is going to be immediately like, okay, so he was talking like a hillbilly here, he's talking like a normal person here. Did he just is it affectation, or does he talk that way normally, or does he change his voice patterns depending on what kind of people he's around, or
Yeah, it just doesn't. It's another thing that just bounces you out of the story because you're like, wait a minute, this person was talking one way a second ago. Or you might even be wondering if it's still the same person talking.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how much you guys want to hear from me. You might just want me to shut up. But I have the book High Kill that I wrote that's with the agent. This was a very specific issue with that book because it was on the 5s. I had one chapter it opened with, and I don't know that he's always going to open it. Before it's over with, the female character may have the first chapter, but the way it is now, an Appalachian teenager has the first chapter, and then chapter 2, 3, and 4 are a female, a reporter from Richmond. And then chapter 5 is him, and then he's on the 5s. But he is exactly what Andrei was just saying. He changes his speech according to who he's around. He's Mensa smart, and he's stuck here in hillbilly hell. And when he's at work, it's like he says, and if he uses a word over 4 letters, they won't even understand what he's talking about. And yet, he doesn't want the reporter, when he's talking to her, he trots it out. He trots out his huge vocabulary and his huge knowledge and the fact that he can speak very well. And that was one of the biggest challenges of my writing career, was to make that not seem like an accident. It's based very much on some people that I know who do that. When they're here and they're around the good old boys, they talk like any hillbilly in the holler. But when they're around other people, you hear it cleaned up a lot. And so that was a challenge. And I don't know if I got it right yet. I suppose the agent will tell me.
Okay, now you have brought up a personal anecdote, which I am going to share because I do that as well. I have a tendency to mirror or adopt the accents and speech patterns around me. And I lived in the South.
Don't feel bad.
Right. Well, I lived in the South. I think it means we're empathetic or manipulative, one of those things. I'm not sure. But I lived in the South for a long time, and we went on vacation for that eclipse. We took the kids down to Tennessee, and we were staying at this RV park, and we had booked 2 sites. Now, I mean, I knew it was going to be crowded, but it is insane. Like, people from all over the world were there. It was booked months and months and months in advance. Like, every hotel was like thousands of dollars a night by the time you got, up to the solar eclipse time. Well, we had reserved 2 sites side by side because my parents were going to also rent an RV, but then they decided to stay in a hotel. And I said, well, we're going to keep it anyway, because half the time these sites are so small. I mean, there's nowhere to do anything. And we've got 3 kids and, cousins and friends coming up. We wanted an area to picnic. Well, when we checked in, they started getting really aggressive with me about like, well, when is your mom bringing her RV? And I said, well, look, I called months ago and verified that, if we didn't have the second RV, we could have a tent there or just have the site empty. Well, one of the women who was working at the place came out and started getting really aggressive with me. She says, no, if you're not going to have an RV on that, then we're renting it out. I said, I paid for it a year ago. Well, I started like getting really aggressive back. I'm an escalator. And, I said a lot of stuff.
Not an elevator?
No, I escalate situations badly. If it weren't for my husband, I'd have been stabbed. I don't know how many times. He's the peacemaker in the family. But when I went inside after I had sent her away with her tail between her legs, my kids were just laughing their asses off. And my middle child says, why did you have a Southern accent? And I said, well, I don't know, because she's from Tennessee. I was just talking like her. And my oldest boy says that's how she shows her dominance.
Oh, God.
And I mean, I guess maybe subconsciously it is. I don't know.
It's a very strange way to show dominance.
Well,
Boy, I tell you what.
People are more likely to listen to you if they feel that you're more like them. So yes, it is manipulative as well.
I actually agree with that, because when I worked in customer service, every time someone came by that had an accent, just because we lived in a multicultural area, they'd be pushed to me because no one else could understand them. And I would immediately adopt their accent, and they would communicate with me like, oh, somebody that speaks my language, like I could help them or something. And I don't know, it facilitated the exchange. So maybe you just wanted to make sure she understood you.
Yeah, it's possible. I know in sales it's very helpful. I was always really successful when I was in sales, just because people like people who are like them. They just do.
Yeah.
Tribalism still exists. So.
Or you can do what I do when I was working telemarketing, and just put on different accents for giggles, because you're there for 8 hours a day and you get bored.
No, I actually did telemarket, and I did really, really well. I had about a 90% conversion rate. I mean, if I talked to old people, I talked really slowly. And if I talked to New Yorkers, I knew to be fast and clipped and get the point across. And it really makes a difference.
It also makes a difference when their name is Nikolai and you're trying to sell different products. But it's almost incomprehensible when you speak because your accent is so thick. I am Nikolai, strong like bull.
But Natasha understands Nikolai.
No, she does not yet.
Fine then.
I think they need a room.
And it sounds like it.
Yeah, Natasha wishes she could get Nikolai.
He's
got higher standards than that. Okay.
Oh, I doubt it.
Probably not. You're right.
I wanted to touch back on, unless you guys don't want me to. I wanted to touch back on
whatever you want.
That's
well,
what she said.
I keep going back to high kill, and it's because was one of the hardest things. Was the hardest thing that I have ever had to write in my life, and it was part of that was because it was based so closely on what happens to me here in Appalachia. The through line for the novel is fiction, but the setup for it and everything that allowed that through line to happen is real. I don't know why I'm getting feedback.
It's probably the plug. Yeah.
Is this better?
Yeah, that's a lot better. I think the plug was just coming loose or something. But anyway, go on.
Okay. Part of working in animal rescue, I have to deal with things that everybody else doesn't have to deal with. I mean, I get called when people's dogs get shot in the head and when their paws get cut off with machetes. And, you know, I worked in EMS and I don't know what is wrong with me upstairs, but I could deal with human tragedy a lot worse, a lot better than I can deal with a little innocent animal burned, you know, set on fire. Gloria's not electrocuting me, G-Mux. Am I still getting feedback?
No, you're good. No,
No,
you're
you're
good.
all
You're
right.
not getting any feedback. You're
Okay,
good.
no feedback. All right. But this stuff
and there it goes.
Now you're getting feedback.
Jesus, Rhonda.
I don't know. What about now?
Yeah, you're good. Continue. I'm sorry. Let's
Turn the vibrator off.
Yeah. Oh boy,
Oh,
the
my.
purple one with the rabbit ears. Yeah, that's the one. I can't deal with that stuff. And it had gotten to the point, you know, people would be tagging me in these Facebook posts of these gruesome things, dogs with their ears chopped off. And, you know, I couldn't handle it. So for me, and this sounds crazy, but I had to look at some things that happened to people. And I had to see, you know, in order for my mind to have any peace, I had to reconcile that I'm feeling awful for these dogs and these animals, but this same stuff happens to people. It's not just the dogs. And I had to remind myself of that. And it took me watching some pretty awful stuff. And it's hard to imagine that you would have to watch a gruesome video of a human being killed, you know, in order to sleep at night. But I mean, it was the only way that I could deal with some of the real life sounds and sights and smells that I had to deal with the animals.
Is it perhaps because people aren't so innocent all the time?
Yeah, it is. But it's also the reminder, you know, it's also the reminder that animals aren't the only ones who suffer this way. You know, that this is a bilateral phenomenon and that humans suffer too. Well, in my novel High Kill, the protagonist, the news reporter, has seen something awful in her past. I mean, awful. I mean, when they say and start shooting at them, I mean, I put her up a tree and started pulling her apart limb from limb. I mean, it was awful. But it had to be to get her where she needed to be convincing in the story. But I had her do the same thing. She was to the point that she had to watch, or she had to see some other things to take the sting off of what she saw in real life, to show herself that, you know, to put herself in that position of saying, I know what this other person went through. I didn't make him go through it alone. I wasn't there with him, but I have not turned away. I have not averted my eyes. I've watched it all the way to the end. Even though it's not him in the video, I have not looked away. I have faced this. So I had to watch some stuff there's a video that I describe in that novel about a kid who, some crazy country, he's had his hands cut off, and talk about peeling like an orange, his face was peeled, and they had a metal rod through his throat and they were killing him. And I don't even remember, I didn't intend to watch that. It's not like I went looking for that. It came up I wasn't even on the dark web. I mean, this is just on the internet. And I found it and I watched it, and it was so traumatic. I mean, just so horrible. And I wrote about it in the novel. Well, you want to talk about going to some dark places? It probably took me 3 months after I finished writing High Kill and all the animal abuse that I had to write about. It probably took me 3 months to get out of that headspace and back into a normal headspace. So I think that we do suffer. And that question came up a while ago. When you write something, do you walk away feeling, you know, are you physically battered from it? You bet. I mean, it was brutal, and I wasn't myself for 2 to 3 months, and now I'm sort of back to normal, but I haven't read the manuscript in a while. But it is, it's pretty tough, and I think that when we go there and when we don't hold back, I think that's when we get the truth on the page.
If it makes you feel any better, none of us think you're normal.
Well, that's good, because I'm not. Yeah, I'm definitely not normal. Definitely.
We're the opposite. We're abnormal. All of us. Well, I can't speak for
abnormal.
Easy. I can't speak for Easy. Maybe Easy's, normal, but the rest of us at Fiction Workshop definitely are not.
No. I'm
Definitely
as
not.
abnormal as you can get.
But you know what? When it comes out on the page, we're gonna be, that's what makes the difference. I think it's just, and I know we're being funny and joking, but there is a certain abnormality to a writer who can put themselves in that headspace. And we suffer. I've read of actors. I've read this about people who take on a role that nearly destroys them. And I think as writers, we can easily do that too. But boy, what comes out on the page is, I'd do it again if I had to write another dark novel. I absolutely would.
So, in other words, you're into murder porn.
No, not right now. I'm into that hot AI guy that I'm writing about, so that's working out pretty well.
As long as he's
His
not
name
hotter
is-
than I am.
Next up,
As long as he's
snuff
not hotter than I am.
films.
Oh, no.
Because we had this conversation where the AI guy is not going to be better looking than I am.
That's right. I knew as soon as I said that in the workshop that you would look at the scroll back and you would come in there and say, no way is he going to be hotter than my character.
That's right. That is 100% correct.
So, do y'all feel like when you submit things for critique, I'm going to get all boring now, but when you submit things, I know, because I feel like I've noticed this, even though I have a lot of, self-insertion, and I've even written some stories that were incredibly close, short stories that were incredibly close to real life events. I find that because there's so much fictionalized in it, there's a certain level of remove that I feel once it goes in for critique. And I wonder how other folks deal with that when you're having, especially like for you, Andre, when you were talking about how clearly you recognize that like every one of those characters is a piece of you. Like, is it harder for you, you think, to accept feedback like that? Because I feel like I've seen some people who came in and out of the workshop maybe that were writing things closer to memoir that really were not able to shoulder the feedback like some of us who have maybe stuck it out there.
And first I want to say that's what she said, sticking it out there.
Attaboy.
But no, to answer your question, me personally, I don't really have an issue with that, and maybe that's just my own personal disposition. I tend to be, I don't know what the word is. I don't want to say self-deprecating because it's not really, it's not depreciative of myself, but I recognize that I am not the best judge of my own work, so input from other people, especially really constructive input, the kind of stuff that we get at the Fiction Workshop, is enormous, even for something that is very, very close to me personally, and that I've poured myself into to create and to write. But I can see how that happens, especially when you have something where the character is only a few degrees removed from yourself. Like stories where the character is literally just like, oh, well, what if I was a hotshot lawyer, or what if I was a fighter pilot, or what if I was this, and that, and it's literally just you're writing you if you had a different profession, and that's basically it.
And
right?
A better body.
Well, yeah, of course.
Well, in my
we're
case,
always the
I don't know.
idealized versions of ourselves. Nobody has love handles in stories unless they're written to be that way. Unless they serve a narrative purpose. Nobody ever has love handles. But I can see how that happens because you pour yourself into this character. You literally write yourself into a page, and then you give it to somebody to say, hey, take a look at it and see, is this good? Is this bad? What do I need to do? And it turns out that your writing is just really not up to par, and there's a lot of critique and a lot of critical analysis of your work, and it can be hard because in a way it's almost as if the analysis and the critique is directed at you personally, not at your work, but at you.
Well, and I think that that's maybe the difference really, is that it's not that there's a remove from the character itself, but maybe that recognition that there is a difference between I'm an artist and whatever I pour onto the page must be respected as my art, and I have a story to tell and it has a lot of me in it, but I recognize there is a level of technical proficiency that is not necessarily just bestowed upon me by the gods, and I need to look for that technical proficiency through the feedback. Because, we aren't making feedback like, you suck, your character sucks, we hate these people.
This is absolutely terrible.
Right. I mean, it's definitely more about the technical aspect of it. And I think maybe, we talk a lot about the art, but I think all of us recognize that, this is not something that just pours out of us. We do have a certain level of creativity, maybe that not everyone has in this particular aspect of our lives. But the technical proficiency itself is not natural. It is something that's hard worked for.
Yeah, and it requires practice, and it requires refinement, and it requires, the doing of the work. It's like
Bingo.
you can be a sculptor. You can be the most creative and imaginative sculptor in the world, but if you don't know how to handle the tools, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's all the ideas will just stay in your head. That's what she said. Ah!
Yeah, but on the whole art thing, like if you look at some of the modern art that's out there nowadays, yeah, you can take a dump on a canvas to try and sell it, but that doesn't mean that it's going to appeal to the masses.
Right.
Yeah, and I have been lately telling people this because
taking dumps on canvases.
No. I haven't recommended that anyone do that, but seeing as how most of my life is spent cleaning up where dogs have taken a dump where they shouldn't, with the rescue.
There
But
goes my
that's
weekend plans.
Oh boy, yeah. So if someone is wanting to come, if a writer has not been in a critique environment before, which can be brutal, it can be a blood sport. There's, let's not kid ourselves. It's hard. It's harsh when you get that, when you get told that half of what you submitted just needs to be scrapped, and you're like, no, I didn't start my story too soon. Well, yeah, you did. But when people are nervous about it, and they've got this novel that they've been working on for 10 years. And I think about Jason Boo, but he's been great. So I'm not talking about you, Jason. But when you've got a novel that you've been working on for a long time, and you're attached to it and you're emotionally connected to it, there's so much of you, that's probably not the best thing to bring first into a workshop environment. Write something just for the workshop. Write a piece of flash, 500 words, 1,000 words. Write something very short, typical of your style of writing, so that it can be honestly evaluated. And you're not connected to that, and you won't take it so personally if you write something just for that critique. Self-contained, it's not part of something greater. And so that's when people are nervous about it. That's what I tell them. Now, there's other people that can come in with a novel and start submitting chapters, and it's just fine. I mean, I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but if there's any question and there's any uncertainty, try that first. Just try writing something and submitting that. Enter a contest and do a contest piece and submit it through the workshop. And by the way, we need to say that our people who are coming through the workshop and they're winning the contests, guys. A lot of these contests are being won by workshoppers. And so, there was one recently when workshoppers took, I think it was 250 out of 300 SPD in prizes. And it's not because, it is because it's because they brought the stuff there and got it edited and got the story to where it came out on the page, rather than got buried down into stuff that people had to sift through. The story was right there on the page. The judges saw it, loved it, and boom, they won. So, that is something I hope a lot of people think about, is if you want to participate in the workshop, in ours or any workshop, write something just for that. Don't start out with something really close to your heart, because if there's a lot of you in that story, you are going to take it personally. And that's going to keep you from hearing anything else that anybody tries to tell you.
When I came to the fiction workshop, that's what I did. I submitted something short that I was not emotionally invested in. And I remember it so well. It was just a month ago or so. Rhonda, you and Jess both set me straight on the perspective problems that the piece had, the point of view issues that were coming up. And I offered up a few little lines of defense, like, well, are you sure? But this is what I want, this is what I'm going for. And you guys showed me within the course of 10 to 15 minutes in real time where my issues were, where my problems were. And
Fries are done.
sorry.
What in the
Jimmy's
hell?
cooking while I'm talking on the radio. But anyway, within 10 to 15 minutes, you guys had given me some really good advice. And the best thing that I could do at that point was be open-minded enough to accept it and to take it and to do something with it and try to learn from it. And so that's what I did. And I hope everybody comes to the Fiction Workshop with that same open mind.
I do too, and I mean it has really been paying off for you, because I mean you've won the you're winning stuff, and I've been a judge in one of the contests, or a couple of I can't even remember now, but I didn't make that decision. That wasn't my decision. That was a group decision based on the quality of the work, and so you've definitely found your voice. There's no question there.
Carol and I and Batman all independently read the stories, and every one of us independently came to the conclusion that Geek was the hands down winner. It was so touching, and just a week before that, you had been asking me, are you sure I'm able to do deep point of view? And when I read that, I sent it to several people in the workshop and was like, oh my goodness, Geek didn't think she could do deep point of view. Read this.
I remember that.
It was amazing. I was captivated. It was just incredible. And I've seen so many people's writing grow, and I don't say that in a way that like, oh, look at you little people getting better. I've seen my writing grow. When I look at things I wrote just a couple of months ago, they seem so juvenile and amateurish compared with what I'm able to produce now because of the help of the workshop.
Oh yeah, and I look back at the chapters I post for my novel, and I read it, and like sometimes I cringe because I'm like,
yes.
oh God, I can't believe I wrote that. It's not good. It is not good.
I'm blessed in that some of my stuff did not ever meet the blockchain, because I would probably, they say the blockchain's permanent. I would destroy it to get my stuff off there. I would nuke the internet to get my early stuff off of it.
Well, it's just been a really supportive group. And a lot of times we have folks who are newer to the workshop and they don't want to offer, any kind of critique of other people's pieces, and just take a moment to remind folks that if you're putting pieces in, you're not by any means obligated to also review pieces, but you're certainly welcome to. We are not writing for professional editors, and professional editors are wonderful and important to have. They help us to polish and all, but for just any reader to look at a piece and be able to point to something that doesn't make sense, or, I got a little bit lost here, those are the people that we're writing for. So it's great if others participate in critique, and anybody in the workshop can tell you how to do that.
See, and that's good to hear, because personally, I don't feel that I'm a good enough writer to be able to critique somebody else. So given that mindset, that makes me a little more comfortable with the idea.
Yeah, see,
absolutely.
we want readers to critique the work, because ultimately readers are going to be the ones that are making these decisions about whether the work reads well, or looks good on the page, doesn't sound blocky or choppy or whatever. So that active reader feedback, that's exactly what we want to give people.
Not only that, but I think that you miss out on some of the development if you don't critique. I really do, because I feel like it was one thing to submit things and have people tell me, you should cut this word, this is redundant, this is repetitious, and, I got that. But it was when I started looking at other people's pieces and I was thinking, well, someone would have told me that's redundant. And I would flag those things. It wasn't until I kind of got in the habit of flagging those things in other people's work that I'm now able to see them in my own. And
Yeah.
I will go back and slash so many words out of my own work that, 6 weeks ago I would have held on to with, they would have had to pry them from my cold, dead hands.
Yeah,
well, it's like when you teach somebody something, when you try and teach someone something, you understand it and you learn it 1,000 times better for yourself than just simply, doing it or learning it from somebody else. So
Absolutely.
Ron,
Let's
I
not leave
interrupted you, I'm
Gmux
sorry.
out here. Let's not leave Gmux out. He's all suffering with a man cold and all kinds of terrible things, but he has an art prompt writing contest. It's posted there in the channel. Let's see, he runs it every 2 weeks, and it is a writing contest, so anybody that's listening should check that out as well, because they're a lot of fun.
I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I'm still. I'm going to get into some scary territory. I might get the band hammer slapped on me here. I'm still iffy about contests. I'm really on the fence about contests. It's almost unheard of for me to enter a contest. And that's not just on Steemit, that's anywhere. Because I have to have some confidence in the judges. And I have to know that the judges understand the stuff that's coming in front of them. And I've seen a lot of things, and I know there's probably at least 6 different people who are going to swear I'm talking about them. I'm not talking about anyone in particular. I've seen this in abundance on Steemit and other platforms, not just here. There are people judging contests who have no business judging contests.
Amen.
And they're judging them based on criteria that is not encouraging the best from the writers, and they're not rewarding the ones that put the work in. And when I see a contest and the winner doesn't know the difference when they should use a possessive form of a word as opposed to a plural, and they've got an apostrophe in the wrong place, not just a typo, but say it happens 2 or 3 times, and somebody who doesn't know the difference when they should use the word lay and when they should use the word lie and things, and you see it kind of a repeating theme in there, and yet that person won. And I have a real problem with that, because we need to make sure that we're putting, we need to put our best out there. We want to be a very good representation of Steemit, of fiction all the way around. And I'm not saying typos don't happen, and I would absolutely curate with SFT. I would curate a story or award a story in a contest that had some kind of accidental thing going on, typo or whatever, missing word. Those things do happen, but I'm talking about something that you see that clearly the writer has not asked for anyone to proofread their work or to look over, or they haven't put the time to proofread or whatever.
Yeah, systemic problems.
Yes, exactly. And I have a real problem with some of the contests everywhere with that. So I'm really hesitant about entering a contest myself. And I've ventured into judging a few, and I'm going to really be cautious with that in the future, just because I think we have to know what we're doing if we're going to do that. And we have to really have a good understanding, not only of literature and what story makes us feel good, but the command of the language. So, I don't know. It's just something kind of put out there for people to think about, maybe.
Honestly, I haven't entered a contest in forever. And
Yeah.
mostly that's just because I've been really busy with real life stuff, which again, I apologize. This week has been fantastic because I finally figured out how to, balance and manage the crap I'm doing for school and everything else on Steam I'm trying to do. But I see where you're coming from. I do. I totally understand that sentiment.
Well, I posted a contest from the real world, the Tennessee Williams Writing Festival. My friend sent me a link to that. They have a very short fiction writing contest and a short story contest, and also some poetry and playwriting for Geek and Pegasus if y'all are interested.
I've always been curious about writing screenplays. Never tried it before. I don't think I'm ever going to, but I'm curious how that works.
It's funny. I was just gonna ask if I could mention the screenwriting workshop, playwright workshop endeavor I was trying to get going.
Ooh,
Oh,
yes, please.
Because writing for a visual medium, be it screen, stage, comic books, it's a little bit different from writing fiction. It actually feels like it needs its own workshop. So I'm trying to get a little interest generated for that, because I think you need a certain number of people before you can get an actual channel here on the Discord. And there are some people out there that seem to be interested. So if anybody's interested, I'll try to find the post and drop it in the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Drop it in the audience. That's a great idea. You're right. It's very different. Having to write things like stage directions, and, your writing style has changed a lot since you started. But I think the first time I reviewed anything of yours, I asked you if you wrote screenplays, because the action seemed very oriented toward that kind of visual media.
Your exact critique was, is this a screenplay? And I was like, when I wrote it, yeah. So
no, that's great though. I'm sure there are a lot of people, especially, I know they're starting like DTube. God, I wish they'd change that name, but people who are right, people who are doing video clips and things like that. I think that's a great place to go.
One thing I've always appreciated. Yeah, go ahead, Tyler. Sorry.
I'm just saying, so many tabs open today.
So much good stuff to find. So much good stuff to look at. There's
so
not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, so many links being tossed in here that are intriguing.
Spam. One thing I do want to mention about screenplays, because I tried my hand at writing one. Man, is it really, really, really different. It is a huge change, especially with because when you think about a screenplay, the primary portions of it are dialogue. That's what screenplay is. That's what screenwriting is. You write dialogue. You have action pieces and everything else, and but a lot of it is dialogue. So trying to transmit a story primarily through dialogue is a huge shift for me trying to do it.
Well, it doesn't.
I got a cartoon.
I'm sorry, go ahead,
project. Yeah, sorry, no worries. I got a cartoon project that I'm working on, and I tried to write it in the style of a screenplay just because it's primarily dialogue, right? And oh my God, like to get out of your normal writing style and then to try and just, in a pair of brackets, okay, this person enters left, this person exits right. It's like, oh, I can't do this.
Now, there are a lot of people think of it as entirely dialogue, but there are a lot of films out there where, oh goodness, there's one, it's a Brazilian film whose title I can't think of right now, but the first 9 minutes are completely tense, completely capturing, and there's no dialogue at all. Or think of Life of Pi. Some people have mixed feelings about it, but I enjoyed watching it, and there was a lot of
Richard Paca.
there were a lot of scenes that didn't have dialogue, and the way this looks in a screenplay is it's very to the point, and it's almost like you're scrolling down a page of text. Like, imagine if somebody sent you a text message of like something that happened to them, some crazy event that happened, and they sent it one beat at a time. I went to the store. I opened the door. A guy ran out.
That was
he
the
had
other
a
thing I
gun.
was fixing to say, because all of the movement and all of the motion. It's you basically strip a story of most or all of its descriptive elements. The flowery language and the descriptors. Aside from what you actually absolutely have to put in there just to give you an idea of what it looks like, and then you write as things happen. It's a really interesting, cool exercise, and it takes
Yes.
most of us that write normal fiction stories. It takes us completely out of our medium and into something different. It's really cool. So I really hope you have a lot of success starting this up, and I would love to help be a part of that. Even though I don't write screenplays or plays, but I would like to be a part of that. I would.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun.
Well, I just want to say before we run out of time that I am just thrilled that we had Ezzy. I'm going to call you Ezzy. I'm never going to remember to call you Easy. Ezzy, it's just going to have to work. I am so thrilled that you were with us. This just was a real treat for me, and sort of a coming of age, and a coming full circle thing for me. And so I'm very, very tickled that you were here. And I want you to know, I don't know if you will even claim us. I don't know how you may say that group of people is so crazy, but I want you to know that you have the open invitation to at any point in any show come in and join us. Come and leave early, come late, whatever. Just come in and join us, and in the audience or in the voice. So you're always welcome.
Yeah, we're very loose here.
That's what she
That's
said.
what she said.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, guys. Yeah, Rhonda, you're so sweet. As all you guys. Yeah, I love all you guys. It was so much fun. Sorry, I went quiet there for a while. It was just so much fun listening to you guys, and I can't believe I made it all the way through to what? It's 1 a.m. I'm looking at the time right now, coming up to 1 a.m. So yeah,
Oh, you're
fantastic.
so sweet.
Yeah,
No,
Muncie
really,
does it all
thank you
the
so
time.
much.
Thank you, Easy.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just to say, it's Easy or Ezzy. It's interchangeable, really. Don't worry about it.
That's a good thing for me.
I can't believe I got that wrong. Coming from a so-called author, I just saw it as Easy, but everyone's saying Ezzy. I can't believe I missed that.
Well, so we're going to be wrapping up the show here. It's coming up on time. Jess, do you want to just plug your contest one more time so we got it in the users' minds?
Yeah, just one last time, keep an eye out. I'll be posting tonight or tomorrow morning. It'll be a 500 word or less flash fiction. The topic is man versus self, and man can be any gender. So whatever, just an internal conflict within the human please character. And that contest will end. Submissions have to be in by 11:59 p.m. next Sunday. Don't post anything before Thursday, or your payout will close before we get to plug you on the show if you win.
All right. Anything else? Anybody else want to wrap up with before we close the show?
Just a big thank you to everybody that's involved.
Yeah. Thanks to everybody who works at the Fiction Workshop. I mean, we got a lot of us here right now on the show, but thank you to everybody at the workshop who comes in, presents their work for critique, and everybody who does the critiquing. I mean, the critiquing is an enormous function that we serve for fiction writing here on Steemit. So thank you to everybody who does it, and I promise I'm going to try and do it more.
Yeah, and I just want to thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. At some point, I'll make a post on Steemit just how much you guys mean to me. I just am so grateful, and just, hey, you're wonderful. Thank you.
I'm right there with you.
I love you guys.
Group hug.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up episode 5 of the Fictioneers Webcast. Once again, thank you to everybody who was here on the show. Thank you especially to Easy for being here with us and burning the midnight oil to get through the entire show. It's been an absolutely great episode. We're going to go ahead and close down here. Coming up next, we got Shane. So without further ado, I just want to thank everybody who listened for coming on, for listening to our show and listening to what we had to say and slogging through the sexual innuendos. And that's what she said. But we will catch you next Tuesday from 5 to 7 Central Standard Time, 10 to 12 US or UDT. And we will catch you next time. You guys have a wonderful evening.